So far away Lucas and lovely audience at home. Welcome to another episode of Wiki Weekends. I am this episode's host, Karl Smallwood, joined as ever by my lovely co-host, Lucas Holland.
Hello there.
And today we're talking about Rise of the Planet of the Apes.
They're just rising so much, Karl.
Take your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape!
And Lucas, what is your familiarity with the Planet of the Apes franchise? Because I have, just in front of me now, a list of all of the associated works within the franchise, and it's actually kind of ridiculous. So it starts with a book, Planet of the Apes, or it's in French, and I don't know the French pronunciation here, but it's like Le Planetes des Singes. Is that how you pronounce apes in French? I'm not sure. That was written by the author of Bridge Over the River Kwai. Then it had a film. The original series is Planet of the Apes, Beneath the Planet of the Apes, Escape from the Planet of the Apes, Conquest of the Planet of the Apes, Battle for the Planet of the Apes. Then there was a remake in 2001, simply titled Planet of the Apes. Then there was a reboot of that series that we're talking about today, starting with Rise of the Planet of the Apes, Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, War for the Planet of the Apes, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, which is the one that's coming out soon. Then there was a television series in 1974 called Planet of the Apes. Then there was an animated series in 1975 called Return to the Planet of the Apes. But then we're not done, because there's also a bunch of video games, including Planet of the Apes, Revenge of the Apes, Planet of the Apes, The Last Frontier, and then Crisis on the Planet of the Apes in VR.
Apes are armed. I repeat, apes have guns. Apes together, strong.
Did you know that Planet of the Apes was that big a franchise?
I didn't, and you've just said Planet of the Apes so many times.
Let me just count. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 things in the franchise that are simply titled Planet of the Apes.
And you know what, Karl? I've seen the most important thing to do with the entire franchise.
Cheers.
Of course, it's the excellent Simpsons clip.
He can talk. He can.
I knew you were going to say that because that is, unironically, one of the greatest things associated with the franchise, where it's just the Planet of the Apes musical, which features one of the strongest lines in any episode of The Simpsons. I hate every ape I see, from Chimpan-A to Chimpan-Z. And then you just have the Dr. Zaius bit, and the monkey that comes out and starts breakdancing.
Dr. Zaius, Dr. Zaius. Oh, Dr. Zaius. Dr. Zaius, Dr. Zaius.
How did that never become a full thing?
It's kind of wild, isn't it?
How did they never make, just a full stage production of that? Because it looks fucking fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
But, we're talking about Rise of the Planet of the Apes, which is the first film in the reboot series. And, just some
We're not talking about, that funky-looking Tim Burton movie, Karl.
That was okay. And I think it was planned to get a sequel, but it just bombed at the box office because no one really gave a fuck. Also, the apes in it look kind of weird.
They look so strange.
They tried to go for that, the cross between the humans and the apes, which I guess kind of makes sense, but just it came across not quite Uncanny Valley, because they don't look human, but they also don't look like apes. So it's whatever the Uncanny Valley effect would be for an ape or a gorilla.
The powerful rule by fear.
Next, you'll be telling us these beasts have a soul.
Is there a soul in there?
It's disgusting the way we treat humans.
It looks like they went to just a really cheap, horror Halloween costume place and just bought a bunch of ape outfits and put them on the actors.
Well, in regards to Rise of the Planet of the Apes, it's a 2011 American science fiction action film directed by Rupert Wyatt and written by Rick Jaffa and Amanda Silver. It is a reboot of the Planet of the Apes film series and its 7th film overall. The film stars an ensemble cast, but the only one you need to really know about is Andy Serkis, because after the first movie, all the human characters get replaced. I think each movie just replaces all of the human characters, because they're not really that important. What is important is the human characters' interactions with the apes.
That's not called fucking Planet of the Humans, is it, Karl?
It's not, no. It's called Planet of the fucking Apes, and all the apes are so whip-assing it. I love it. Because anyone who's watched content I've been involved with for any reasonable length of time will know that I just love gorillas and apes and monkeys and primates in general, because there's just something so hilarious about apes. And I don't know what it is about gorillas and monkeys and apes, but it's not a fascination that is entirely unique. And for many, many years, well over a century now, just humans have been obsessed with apes and primates and monkeys because, yeah, they're our closest, like, genetic cousins, I think it is, right? That's what they say.
Mm-hmm.
And there is humanity in there. Like, when you look into, like, the eyes of a gorilla, you can see humanity in there. There is a great degree of nobility in, like, the profile, the silhouettes of a gorilla, like, a big silverback or something like that.
Mommy, help me!
Then they'll just rotate at high speed.
That's the clip I was thinking of.
Just the rotating gorilla.
The spinning gorilla. Yeah.
It's so good, right? It's so good. Well,
and then there's also just another clip of, like, someone showing TikTok to a gorilla.
Oh, yeah.
And then the gorilla being like, swipe more. I want to see more content.
And I think one of the reasons why apes are so fascinating is because there is a degree of humanity in there. Like, you can see, that's literally what the Planet of the Apes series is about. But also there's that, that primal energy in there. Like, when you see a gorilla can go from, like, 0 to 60.
Yeah, and I think it's so funny when you meet those people who think that they could, like, take a gorilla or a chimpanzee or something in a fight. It's like, no, you could not.
All you need to do to, like, think, could you take, like, just a primate in a fight? And I will clarify that I'm probably going to use monkey and apes interchangeably. I understand they are different things. Monkeys have tails, apes do not. I might use the terms interchangeably throughout this video. I apologize for that. It's probably because I'm just getting a little bit too excited. But I do acknowledge that, apes and monkeys are not the same thing. But to a lot of people, they're similar enough where you can use the terms interchangeably.
Yeah, for sure. And I just feel sorry for, I can't remember which ape it is, but there's only one ape that's not classified as a great ape.
It's just a regular ape.
There's only one regular ape, and it's so unfair.
And all the rest of them are just great apes. It's so good. And you mentioned that there's people out there who think they could take, like, a chimpanzee or a gorilla in a fist fight. It's like, no. There is no chance. There is no chance whatsoever. Like, all you need to do to completely just, like, dissuade yourself of that idea is look at that picture of a shaved chimp. And it's just pure muscle. Like, it's the most stacked thing I've ever seen. But getting back to Rise of the Planet of the Apes. In the film, Caesar, a chimpanzee genetically enhanced and raised by William Rodman, played by James Franco, goes from living in captivity to eventually leading an ape uprising against humanity. And one of the things that makes the film just so good to watch is just Andy Serkis is just Caesar. He is so good in that role. Like, Caesar, you believe that is a real chimpanzee, but it's not. It's CGI, but the CGI in the movie is almost seamless. There's only a few parts of that initial movie that I can remember that kind of don't hold up, but every subsequent sequel to Rise of the Planet of the Apes, just the apes look better every time.
He's gonna slaughter us.
I did not start this war. The ape who did is dead.
I recently saw a few just promo shots and stuff where it was like, oh, here's just the actors in the ape outfits doing, like, shooting for the film in, like, San Francisco or whatever. And it's just like, A, they look fantastic, but B, it looks so stupid to see, like, what look like actual apes posing for photos in San Francisco.
And that's one of the things that makes the Planet of the Apes series such an interesting watch, because you can just watch it as a dumb action movie where gorillas take over the world, or you can engage with the story, which handles a lot of pretty heavy topics, like, just acceptance of differences and what makes a leader and the kind of pressures that are placed on someone who is a leader. Like, also, like, should we, like, just treat animals poorly because we see ourselves as above them? But what would happen when we do that to something that can defend itself and fight back? Which is what the apes do.
Yeah, and obviously most sane people's answer nowadays would be, no, we should probably treat animals a lot better than we have done in the past.
Yeah, and like the opening, hour of the movie is really, really harrowing, because it's Caesar. He's a chimp that's been experimented on, and he's treated quite well. But there's other chimps that aren't being treated so well, and you have like one of like Caesar's like just strongest confidants throughout the movie, and I have the name here, Koba. Koba's like the chimp that was experimented on a lot, and Koba fucking hates people.
Really calm.
Yeah. Yeah, this guy's seen the inside of a whole lot of labs. He knows the drill.
Thought I'd join you.
Tighten your man.
Pulse ox is good. Blood pressure steady.
And that sets up an interesting dynamic between the two, almost akin to like, Professor X and Magneto, where Professor X was raised with privilege and sees, coexistence as the path to, the future, whereas Magneto, who experienced the worst of humanity, does not want to give them that chance, and Koba's very much the same way. And he's always like that little devil on Caesar's shoulder, of just like, well, the humans are going to attack us. We need to attack them first. And like, Koba, stop fucking... Like, every time we encounter humans, you immediately escalate, so we should kill them all. Stop it.
Not you.
Caesar's trying to be a bit more of a diplomat.
Yeah. And which is kind of hilarious that his name is Caesar. And Lucas, even though you've not watched the film, you probably are aware of the plot just via pop culture osmosis, right?
I mean, I'm aware that kind of the base idea of Planet of the Apes is that it's Earth, but apes have taken over.
Yeah, and in Rise of the Planet of the Apes, it is Caesar is given this experimental drug that was supposed to be designed to help cure Alzheimer's, and he makes him super smart. And then what happens is Caesar develops intelligence, which again is a really great sequence in the film where he's slowly learning intelligence, and he takes like that drug and he gives it to the other apes to make them super smart, and then they all escape and run away.
I was wondering how they all managed to gain intelligence, yeah.
Yeah, it's like Caesar is like the smartest of the apes, and he's the one who can talk as well, which you have a really great moment in the film where it's Tom Felton of all people. He's just like the dickhead zookeeper, and he's like yelling at the apes, which is really stupid. Like he tries to beat the apes with a stick, and he tries to hit Caesar's like, "Get your hands off me, you damn dirty ape," which is a reference to the first film. And then Caesar just stands up and just screams like, "No!" And Tom Felton's like, "Oh no, this ape, he has learned. The combat
Tom
will
Felton,
begin."
that's Draco Malfoy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like just being typecast into just the dickhead that hates other people.
Take your stinking paw off me, you damn dirty ape!
The end of the film is that, yeah, so that drug they invented to help cure Alzheimer's, it's like, okay, it actually just causes a really deadly fucking disease in humans, and apes are immune, and he makes them super smart, but for humans, it just kills them. And the end of the film is a guy who's got the disease getting onto a plane, and it starts a global pandemic that wipes out like 90% of the Earth's population.
Right, fair enough, yeah.
Yeah. And there's the casting section here, and I don't want to talk about like, the human cast again. They don't matter. But they do have the ape cast. Because Caesar has like his ape bros, and they're all awesome.
Bring me like yeah, I really wanted you to do it in the form of like the DK rap.
I can't do the Lucas. I can't do the DK rap. But the Rise of the Planet of the Apes features an ape cast that includes Karen Conoval as the Bornean orangutan Maurice, and Maurice is like the just Caesar's bro throughout every single movie. And again, like orangutans are one of those like creatures where I think just everyone's pretty much in universal agreement of like there's something special about orangutans. Like, there's just something very soulful about orangutans. Like, do you ever see that footage of someone was going through like the Bornean jungle and there's just an orangutan watching them, and it's like that's a woodland spirit.
Researchers are hoping this new technology could eventually be introduced to zoos right around the world. But for visitors here at Melbourne Zoo, they may be lucky enough to experience it for themselves, with the trial running sporadically throughout the rest of the month.
As you say earlier, like, I generally just find monkeys and apes very endearing, but orangutans definitely are just very special. Maybe that's just me saying it because I'm ginger.
Yeah, and they also as well are like, you know, agree to be like the smartest of like the great apes. And one of the things that's like present throughout the film is that Maurice is like, you know, he's the diplomat. He's like the most trusted confidant of Caesar, and he's the one who always wants to like you know, propose a peaceful solution.
I mean, just visually speaking, they kind of fit the role of like the wise guru.
Yeah, and that's basically, he spends all the movie like they'll, and I don't remember which one of the movies that it is, but there's one basically it's just in their camp, and it's half an hour where there's no dialogue. It's all sign language between the apes because Caesar's the only one who can speak properly.
Oh.
And like just Maurice is always just like super wizened and like reasoned. But then you have the other apes. They include a western lowland gorilla, Buck. And Buck is like the most bro gorilla you have ever seen, Lucas, because he initially is this big angry gorilla, and all the apes in like the ape house where Caesar's first captured are like, don't go in there. There's a very angry gorilla in there. He's so angry that he's got to be kept in his cage all the time. And what Caesar does is he makes friends with him. And then he releases the gorilla. And you have this great moment where the gorilla just like bursts out of its enclosure, and it's the first time it's experienced freedom in like 5 years. And it immediately just swears allegiance to Freezer.
Hello, monkeys.
He immediately swears allegiance to Caesar. And he's like he's the most bro gorilla you've ever seen.
I mean, that's the thing, right? If you were imprisoned for 5 years plus, and somebody came and was like, look, I understand that you're angry, I'm gonna let you out, I'd probably swear allegiance to that person too.
Yep, and Buck has like one of the most like just heroic death scenes of any character in fiction, where like Caesar's been pinned down by like a helicopter that's firing machine guns at him, because the end of the film is all like the apes on the the San Francisco bridge, the Golden Gate Bridge, yeah, just being shot at by helicopters. Yeah. Buck just runs out while being shot and dives off the edge of the bridge into the helicopter and takes it out. He's like the most hero moment you've ever seen, of just like he's getting shot and he shrugs it off and just he body checks a helicopter out of the sky for Caesar.
Oh my god. The true hero moment.
He's the most hero moment ever. And then you have Devin Dalton as several characters, but most notably the treacherous bonobo, Koba. Like I think Koba looks like super fucked up. He's had all the experiments done on him and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's real fucking rough. Like, and you can understand why that character would fucking hate people when they spent their entire life being experimented on.
Yeah, it's not really a hard perspective to like see, as you say, kind of. It's a weird example, but like using the example of like Magneto, of like watching all of these humans suffer and get murdered around him, and just yeah, that would kind of fuck up your perspective on humanity.
Yeah, and that leads to an interesting dynamic between the two characters, and that's where you get possibly the film's most iconic line. Because Caesar just vehemently dislikes the idea of apes fighting amongst themselves, because that's something humans do.
Yeah, and obviously you would imagine in nature, there's often fights of like who is the leader of the pack or whatever, but in this scenario of Planet of the Apes, it's like, yeah, no, we can't have infighting because A, that makes us weaker, and B, makes us as bad as them.
Ape together strong, and that's where you get that line. And one of the coolest moments is where Cobra tries to challenge Caesar's leadership, and just Caesar kicks the ever-living fuck out of him. And he's like, that's why Caesar is our leader. That is why he is the leader. He's just the most like beef-like chimpanzee you've ever seen. And there's several sections here, Lucas, but one I want to cover is visual effects, because those apes look fucking crisp. There are some crisp-ass looking apes in this film. So, as the apes in Rise were meant to be real, the producers decided not to use actors in suits. After considering using real apes, which I can't imagine how poorly that would have gone.
Holy shit, that would have been a nightmare set.
Considering how many fucking apes are in this movie on the last... So, to get the ending that they made for this film with real apes, they legit would have just had to create Planet of the Apes. Of just releasing like 100 gorillas onto the Golden Gate Bridge. That's the only way they would have realised that.
Yeah, I don't think that would have gone well.
After considering real apes, instead, just now, digital effects wizards, Weta Digital, created the apes digitally in almost every case through performance capture. And like I said, there are some good-looking apes.
To bring the performance through clearly, we blended features of the actor's face into the digital facial puppet, most notably his eyebrows and certain lip shapes.
Yeah, they're really good looking, and I can't imagine that it would have gone well in, like, if they'd kept the idea of real apes for the sequels where they're, like, riding on horses.
I will say again, you can watch the films for the message and the story, or you can watch it for the dumb action. Later films in this, reboot series have an ape riding a horse, firing 2 heavy machine guns into the air. And it's like, that is an album cover. I would buy that album. I don't care what songs on it, I would buy that album.
Like, imagine trying to explain that to the animal trainer on set. Of, like, all we need you to do, right?
We need you to give the ape a machine gun. Because that sounds like a bad idea, because ape with a machine gun is literally one of those quotes like, this is a bad idea. And you want to give him...
Then we need you to just put it on top of a horse.
Yeah, and after you give him the other one, one machine gun, give him the other one then. And now make him ride the horse. And now make him fight Woody Harrelson. It's like, what? Advances in the technology allowed the use of performance capture in an exterior environment, because previously, performance capture like that needs to be done on, the weird green screen purgatory they put Andy Serkis in for the Lord of the Rings movies.
Andy's physical presence on set became an important part of how Gollum was developed. And so what we wanted to do was to take all that physicality and find a way to capture that and bring it to the digital character of Gollum.
I know for back in the day with Lord of the Rings, some of the behind the scenes ones are they did performance capture, but then also got real Andy Serkis to just do reference footage of struggling through the river, just
which makes it super but they said that advances in the technology allow them to film this footage in an exterior environment, affording the filmmakers the freedom to shoot much of the film on location with other actors as opposed to the confines of a soundstage. So when you see them out in San Francisco and you see all that good old ape action kicking off, they're filming that outside.
And that kind of goes two ways, because on the one hand I'm like, wow, that's a really cool advancement in technology, and on the other side I'm thinking, Oh god, these poor VFX workers.
These poor VFX workers, yes. And it says the main breakthrough was a camera that enabled viewing the motion capture dots in broad daylight. Because the people don't know, like, you've probably seen behind the scenes footage of, like, presumably like Lord of the Rings and stuff with Andy Serkis, where they stick the dots or like the ping pong balls all over you, and you have to have a controlled environment because you need to track where each one of those things goes. And if you put them outside in like broad daylight or something like that, those dots would be incredibly hard, if not impossible, to capture clearly. They had a camera that would allow them to do so, allowing them to put those costumes on outside and film against like an actual physical set instead of a digitally created one on a soundstage.
Yeah, it's kind of wild to see where the technology's gone in 20 years or so.
Yep, he mentions here that a maximum of 6 actors could have their movements captured with larger crowds of apes using fully digital animals that were animated using, and just this sentence is fucking fascinating to me, Weta's movement library. So Weta Workshop and Weta Digital have just this library of animal movements that they can just use for, like, you know, CGI animals and crowds and stuff.
I wonder how much of that is Andy Serkis.
Probably quite a bit of it. And have you ever heard, like, you know, we're mentioning like Weta and Andy Serkis and Lord of the Rings. Have you ever heard about some of the mistakes that would happen with like, the battle scenes?
No.
So, like, Lord of the Rings famously use like a lot of practical effects. Like a lot of like those big army shots are real actors in real costumes, but for some of the bigger battle scenes, they had to use CGI. And Weta built like this archive of like, you know, just soldiers with like pretty basic rudimentary AI that they could drag and drop onto the battlefield, like almost like an RTS game or something like that. So let's say, okay, we want like the Riders of Rohan to come in from this direction. Here's the digital versions. We'll clean it up later, but we're just gonna make them clash to, like, you know, and they've got very basic AI of when they encounter an enemy, they'll do this, and then we'll go in and clean it up if we need to. One of the things they noticed when they were making battle scenes is that the AI soldiers kept running away, and they couldn't figure out what was going on. They say we'd look at battlefields, and then we'd look in the background, and the AI soldiers would be running in the opposite direction like they were scared. It turns out, like, because that's really funny, right? And it's like, oh, did they gain self-awareness? Like, no. They had very rudimentary programming. They were programmed to run in a straight line until they encountered an enemy, at which point they'd go into, like, battle mode and start fighting. Yeah. But sometimes, like, the lines would not cross over, so they'd run past the battle and just keep going. So we'd look at, like, these big battle scenes, like, okay, this looks good. Wait a minute, what are those orcs doing over there? They're running away, the cowards!
Just, you got a big block that just never clashed with anything and it just keep on going.
They just kept going and ran away. And I love that just stuff like that can happen, because obviously, yeah, it's the program to do this one very specific thing, and it's really hard to account for every conceivable potential interaction that might occur.
Yeah, there's a reason that video games on that scale take years to develop, of like, it's hard to do, and they didn't have the time to make that fully enveloped game alongside making Lord of the Rings.
Yep, and I just love stuff like that, and just, you know, Weta Digital presumably has just probably the most valuable thing they own will be that library, I imagine.
I mean, it's got to be extensive, right? Like, this point.
So I just imagine, like, any time they are asked to create, like, because it's similar thing with, like, you know, physical props, where prop makers and stuff, which, you know, Weta also did. Like, a lot of what their value was is that they just had so much shit knocking about that they could use and repurpose.
I do wonder how many different animals. If, like, Andy, just like, can you do us a favour today? You just come in and being a frog.
Being a frog. He probably could do it as well. And it mentions here that after shooting the actors playing humans interacting with others wearing the motion capture suits, a clean plate was shot with the actors for extra reference, a standard filmmaking technique when digital effects are being used.
Essentially, a clean plate is exactly what it sounds like. A clean plate is a version of the frame which is clean. There's no subject in the frame. So if this video clip right here is the master clip, then the clean plate is going to be this exact frame with everything exactly where it is now, except I won't be in the frame.
Everyone always thinks when it comes to this movie, Andy Serkis, right? It's an Andy Serkis vehicle. But there's another guy who doesn't often get a lot of credit, And that guy is actor stuntman Terry Notary, who guided all of the actors on realistic ape movements, while Weta studied the chimps in the Wellington Zoo for reference.
And you have your gorillas that are much more, they like punch the ground. They're very stabbing, and they stab the ground, they pull their legs along. And they're very, there's a bravado and a posturing that happens a lot with gorillas.
Yeah, because you often hear about, oh, Andy Serkis sat here and studied apes and blah, 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 but there is probably an unfair amount of credit given to just him.
Yeah, and you know, it was a team effort, and this guy here, Terry Notary, is the guy who was like advising everybody, including Andy, on how to move like an ape. And he mentions here that, you know, they went to a zoo to study actual apes for reference footage, and the digital apes also received detailed models with skeletons, muscles, and nerve tissue layers for the most accurate animation possible.
That's the kind of stuff where it is incredible, but also freaks me out a little bit that we're able to pull that stuff off of. Yeah, it's not just a few little, like, lines in a skeleton anymore. It's actual, like, here's how, like, the nerves and the muscles and the hair all interact with one another, and, like,
we can manipulate that model with, like, you know, our computer, and the way we manipulate it, it will react as if a real ape would.
And then you see the stuff behind the, like, eyes that they used in Alita Battle Angel of, like, oh, we've gone in and, like, digitally recreated an entire eye from the inside out.
Yep, and it will react when we pass the artificial lighting over it. It will react like a real human eye would.
For her eyes, we developed a new geometry for the iris and a Houdini simulation toolset that let modelers and animators control intra-eye movement to enhance the realism.
And mentions that cast models of apes' head and limbs help the texture department replicate skin details such as wrinkles and pores. And that's the other thing as well, because Weta have like that. They have the digital team, which are really good. They also have their, like, you know, physical prop makers. They made like physical prop, like monkey and ape masks that the digital team can then use as reference, which is generally where you get films that have really good CGI. Like Jurassic Park is the most famous example. The reason the CGI looks so good is because it was almost 100% congruent with what the physical props were, because the physical prop makers would just bring them into the digital guys and say, scan it in, make the digital version of the T-Rex, for example, look exactly like this. So when we have, like, you know, a shot that goes from practical effects to digital effects, it's almost entirely seamless.
To assure a consistent look between the CGI and mechanical dinosaurs, Stan Winston's miniatures, known as maquettes, were sent to the computer artists.
Yeah, I think most of the examples in Jurassic Park, there usually was some kind of, like, mechanical thing or puppet or something to go alongside for reference.
Yeah, and similarly with Rise of the Planet of the Apes, while there weren't a lot of, like, you know, people running around in ape costumes, you did have Andy Serkis and the other physical actors running around in the motion capture suits to give actors something to act against.
Because, I mean, obviously people kind of mock the way that, like, a lot of green screen movies that are entirely green screen just look and how people act and stuff, but I can't imagine having to act against a tennis ball.
It is a skill. I can't imagine being able to take, like, you know, the performance of Andy Serkis seriously when he's running around with, like, see how he did it? He did it with, like, crutches. To, like, simulate walking around, like, you know, on his knuckles. And then being able to give a believable, convincing performance when it's Andy Serkis in a, like, you know, a weird morph suit and crutches running around snarling like a gorilla.
Humans and apes just have different muscles. On the neck, for example, do the animators match Toby's tightening of his neck muscles with incorrectly placed muscles on Koba, or do they remain faithful to the primate's actual muscle anatomy and then tense different muscles that maybe don't read with exactly the same expression as Toby's original performance?
Yeah, it's like, I can't remember the name of the movie, but the one where it's Harrison Ford having to stroke the dog, but it's actually just a dude in a motion capture outfit.
One of the great gifts of this whole experience was to bring in Terry Notary, who was a Cirque du Soleil artist, to play Buck.
Given the difference between human and chimpanzee facial muscles, the animators tweaked the performance through a new facial muscle system, adding dynamics, ballistics, and secondary motion. As the silent performance required expressive eyes, a new eye model was made to depict both greater accuracy and muscle movement in and around the eyes. So similar to you mentioned there, like Alita Battle Angel, because Caesar's performance is almost entirely done through facial animations. You needed those chimpanzee facial animations to look real fucking good. And that included like just creating an entire digital eye.
Yeah, it's just, again, it's actually insane the level of detail that we've gotten to at this point.
Yeah, and the fact that this is like, you know, as you said, like nearly 20 years ago, and the new one has even more of this bullshit. He mentions here that while Andy Serkis was the primary performer for Caesar, as the effects team considered that at times Andy overcame the character, other motion capture team actors were also used, specifically Devin Dalton, whose height matched that of a chimpanzee, alongside the previously mentioned Notary to play Caesar in stunt-filled scenes, such as the Golden Gate Bridge. So Andy Serkis like portrayed him as walking around, but for like when you got Caesar doing like backflips and drop kicking people on the Golden Gate Bridge, that's Terry Notary.
Of course, yeah. It's always one of those things where we just need to generally give better credit to stunt people.
Well, that's it's something they've been campaigning for years now. I think one of the biggest proponents of it is Jason Statham. Whereas, like, my entire career is built off the backs of stunt actors. Like, my films would not be as successful. I would not have a career if not for the incredibly dedicated, hard-working stunt people I have had the pleasure of working with throughout my career. And for the most part, their achievements are often entirely overlooked, and in some cases, credited entirely to me. Which must be, like, gutting for, like, you know, Jason Statham. Like, you know, he can do a lot of his own stunts. Like, you know, he's a really competent martial artist, and he's a very physically proficient actor, but he can't do everything he does in those movies. And the people who can often don't get credit.
Yeah, it's similar to Tom Cruise, isn't it? Where Tom Cruise literally made a production studio so that he could get around the idea of like being too valuable to do stunts, but he still has stunt people do the really hard shit for him.
And also help him set up those, like, you know, stunts that he's become known for. Seems like Jackie Chan. We had like the Jackie Chan stunt team. And he'd only work with his own stunt team because they were the only people he trusted to be able to do what he required of them. But for the most part, stunt actors are an entirely overlooked aspect of filmmaking. They don't really get the due they inarguably deserve, because when you think of, like, you know, big bombastic action moments in film, it's not, you know, unless it's Tom Cruise, it's not really the actor doing that. It's someone who got paid a lot less, who will not get proper credit for it, actually putting their, in some cases, life on the line to get that.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's the thing. As much as there are safety implementations, like, there are still to this day recent stories about stunt people dying on set
or getting, like, you know, horrifically injured, and they're really poorly compensated. And you know, in regards to the MCU, there's a really great article with the guy who's like the stunt guy who stands in for like Chris Evans and Chris Hemsworth, where it's like something that people don't consider is that, you know, I'm really good at my job, and I kind of look like Chris Evans or Chris Hemsworth with like the right makeup, and, like, you know, you film me from behind or whatever. But something people maybe don't consider is that I have to physically resemble these actors as closely as possible in terms of, like, how muscular I am. And when actors are getting these, like, you know, vanity muscles, like, I think Chris Hemsworth, do you know how big he got for, like, Thor Love and Thunder? Like, he got absolutely fucking ginormous. It's like, that's great for when he's on screen, like, you know, swanning around carrying Mjolnir. But when his character is required to do the full splits and a backflip, I have to come in, be as physically big as he is, but then flexible enough to do the full splits and a backflip, which is very difficult, if not outright impossible. And he talks about how he basically had to do Chris Hemsworth's workout routine for a fraction of the money, but also had to do his own workout routine to maintain the flexibility and physicality to actually do the stunts. Because being big is just one part of it. The guy actually needed to be able to, like, do backflips and shit.
Yeah, exactly. Like, flexibility is a massive part of that, and it reminds me of kind of I think the stunt double, or like just a general double for The Rock, is his cousin, and he's like man, I have to keep up with this guy who is just inflating at an unreasonable level.
Yeah, by by 2040, just a quantifiable percentage of the United States will just be The Rock. He's so ginormous and large, and that's something, these stunt actors, we mentioned visual effects earlier, when they're really good, visual effects people don't notice that they're there. It's the same thing for stunt actors. It must be really good for a stunt actor. The better the job they do, the less it's noticeable that they actually did anything, because the effect will be almost seamless. People will just, in some cases, credit it to the actor themselves.
I think what's maybe worse with the VFX stuff, though, is that there are movies full of VFX, and Barbie's a good recent example, where they will lie about doing everything practically. And there's even behind-the-scenes footage for Barbie where they've done blue screen and green screen VFX to make it look like there weren't blue screen and green screen VFX.
Yep, and it's that thing of and for the most part it's entirely seamless, so the people who actually are responsible for creating those scenes don't get the credit they deserve, and in some cases, like you said, their additions to the film are being actively downplayed. And it must suck.
Yeah, I think people just kind of learn, CGI look bad. And that's not the case. It's just sometimes it looks bad and you notice, but this has led to the point where Hollywood is now just outright lying about the fact that, everything was practical.
Yeah, but for the most part, it's stuff that you wouldn't even notice, and that's why it's so good. And I think the one that always gets me is the CGI wall in Endgame. Because in Endgame where Iron Man rocks up and the Black Order are in New York, and Iron Man is he goes onto the New York City corner and he's looking around people running past. That wall is CGI. Would you ever know that wall is CGI? No. But someone had to sit there and make that wall with CGI. And then you never got credit for it, because why would you care? Why would you notice that a wall is CGI? But it is. And it's even stunt actors, isn't it? So, in that vein, Lucas, before we end, is there any, favourite stunts from movies that you would like to highlight or talk about? And what I will do is I will track down the scene and I will find out the stunt performer in that moment and put their name on screen to give them credit.
Maybe you go first to talk to think on the spot.
I was going to say Jackie Chan movies, so I don't have to put the credit in, because he's doing them. So he's doing the stunts. But maybe an MCU stunt then. That'd be easy, right? We mentioned the MCU is your favourite big bombastic moment in the MCU. And let's give the actors who are literally being superheroes the credit they deserve.
Yeah, I'm trying to think now. The first thing that comes to mind is the elevator fight with Captain America. Yeah, it's hard with the MCU, isn't it? Because so much of it is just, it is digital, right? A lot of it is just things on a blue screen. You think about the Avengers Endgame massive fight at the end, and it's the portal scene was just filmed in a giant green environment.
Filmed like a giant green warehouse, yes.
And it's so it is kind of hard. I do think one funny thing to note is that apparently stunt people really hate copying Captain America's run.
What is it? Does he run weird or something?
So he runs almost perfectly efficiently, apparently, because he was a ballet dancer.
He's a perfect human being, right?
It's Captain America is a perfect human being, but Chris Evans isn't. But
he's about as close as you can get, yeah.
It's one of those weird things where, because he's trained so well and was a traditionally trained ballet dancer, his form is so excellent that apparently he doesn't bob at all in his run. It's almost perfectly straight and efficient, and it's really hard to replicate.
Don't say it. Don't you say it. Left. Come on!
It's one of those things where a stunt actor has to be able to do that, because you'd notice it otherwise. You would notice the visual differences. Well, that's why is he running weird in this scene? It might not be something that I'd immediately register with you, but it would stand out. And they don't want that when they're making a movie. They don't want, when they change the actor doing a performance, for you to notice.
Exactly, yeah. And it's one of those weird things where you kind of would notice if a person's run was completely different from, like, the back and the front. And just another thing to mention with Captain America, I guess, and I'm going all in on Cap, is that one drop kick where he goes perfectly horizontal.
It's so funny. Like, he just goes full pencil against the Ultron drone. It's like, it's so fucking strong. Yeah. So I'll track down, like, I believe it will be that stunt actor I mentioned previously. And that is that is a fucking good drop kick, right?
It's an excellent drop kick, and the moment someone just points out, he goes perfect form horizontal and just drops. It's like, I can't unsee it.
It's so good.
We are very not clear.
And I guess, sticking in the realm of the MCU, we could talk about Captain America. Something I am aware of that Chris Evans came up with is the way Captain America throws his shield. Because apparently it's like, this is one of the most iconic things about the character. He throws his shield. The thing is, though, for the most part, he throws his shield in comic books, which are static images. We don't actually know what the movement is to throw his shield, and everything they tried looked stupid. Because at first they thought throw it like a frisbee, but that looks too stupid. You also can't do that while running. But also with the way he holds it like a shield, like strapped to his arm like this, you can't like throw it over arm and let go, because that wouldn't make sense. It'd like scrape over your shoulder or something. What do we do? And Chris Evans came up with the idea of like throwing it underarm, like a dinner plate. And apparently the only reason that was the way that the shield became, that's how you throw it, is it looked really good in slow motion. Like when they had it in slow motion, like him like throwing like the shield underarm towards the screen looked really good. Almost like a comic panel.
It's great though, because you get those moments where he'll then re-grab it and throw it as if he's doing like the overarm punch, and like that combo of like the underarm into the overarm looks really cool as well.
It also looks like it'd really fucking hurt. I don't know how he doesn't right out kill people with that thing, because think about how sharp the edge of that shield is when he's like twatting someone in the eyes with it.
I guess like the excuse can be something to do with vibranium taking the impact.
Maybe, yeah, but that is like a really, really stupid thing they had to figure out, because the character has been doing it a lot, and there needs to be a consistent way that he does it for, we want that keyframe that we can put on posters and stuff. It's just very funny to me.
They did figure out a really cool way to do it.
But just the fact that someone had to sit there and figure out how the fuck to throw this shield, it's like, well, he throws it in the comics, but you'll see him like have it in his hand, and the next shot it's like flown like 100 yards in the next panel and hit somebody. We don't know the actual motion that he does to throw it.
Yeah. And I guess there's like probably, some kind of animated reference that they can use and stuff. But again, that doesn't deal with the real world difficulties of, for example, hitting your shoulder while you're trying to do it.
I still think you should just throw it like Captain America does in like Marvel vs. Capcom games. And he has to say shield throw when he does it. He does like the full like shield throw. He needs to say just stars and stripes when he does a fucking uppercut. Because if he's not saying that,
a lot of people look up to me. Now I'll show you why.
I was about to say, just like, how long before we get the other moves where like the stars and stripes come in?
I think just legit we need a comic character in a live action movie who calls out their moves who's not Deadpool. I don't like when Deadpool does it because he's doing it ironically. No, I want Wolverine in that Deadpool movie to start saying like Berserker Barrage and like Tornado Claw and all that shit.
Let's go, bub. Weapon X.
Speaking of Deadpool and Wolverine, one of the more recent trailers dropped for it, and it looks incredibly good. Like, I'm very excited for that film, but the one thing I will say is that the Deadpool franchise was very notable for being like, finally, we've just done it and stuck a mask on the guy, and then they didn't put the Wolverine iconic mask on Hugh Jackman. I know Spider-Man already had a mask on as well, but a lot of the emotional scenes with Spider-Man takes his mask off or it gets damaged or whatever. And with Deadpool, they just kind of committed.
Yep, he wears the mask because the character wears a mask because he's a superhero. And yeah, if they didn't put the mask on, maybe he will put the mask on, maybe he'll take it off.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'd love to just see a moment where we had Wolverine in full Wolverine mask as well as the yellow and blue, but we got the yellow and blue outfit,
Close
so
enough,
I can't
yeah.
complain that much.
The problem is, though, is that what looks good in a comic panel will not look good in live action. It's like you mentioned Spider-Man earlier. One of my chief complaints about live action Spider-Man is that he doesn't move like a spider a lot of the time. Like he just like when you see like Andrew Garfield walking around, he literally just walks around as Spider-Man, which is, you know, because that's an actor. It would be impossible for him to move like a spider, which is why in animation Spider-Man generally looks more like Spider-Man to me, because he can move in a way that a human being wouldn't be able to.
But, I just have to toss out the garbage.
I mentioned like the Marvel vs. Capcom games, like Spider-Man in that, where he fights from a completely crouched position 90% of the time.
Look out! Here comes the Spider-Man. Get ready! Maximum Spider!
Yeah, playing those bongos.
Yeah, because that's what Spider-Man would like, or, you know, when he crawls along a wall. And that's why I always single out one of the single best Spider-Man moments in any of the live-action movies, because it's the only time he actually moves like a spider, is when he's like sneaking up on the guy who he thinks killed Uncle Ben. He just comes down on the wire. Which is the only time he moves like a spider. Throughout the rest of it, he just walks around like a guy.
Who's there?
Yeah, and it's weird, like, that comparison to playing the video games where you're constantly on the walls and dropping down on webs and stuff like that, yeah.
Yeah, it was like, you know, there's a few moments in the live-action movies where he does move like a spider, like his introduction in, like, the Civil War movie, where he's, like, crawling along the wall. Now, that looks really cool, but then as soon as he drops down into the scene, he just stands up. Just goes into his, like, you know, Tom Holland's default A pose and talks normally.
What the hell is that? Everyone's got a gimmick now.
You have a metal arm?
Which, it works fine for the films.
But I think that with Wolverine as well, because a lot of, like, media with Wolverine, like the comics and the cartoons and stuff, he's hunched over to an almost comical degree. Like, think about, like, his, again, Marvel vs. Capcom. Think about his, like, his default fighting pose in Marvel vs. Capcom, where he's almost entirely hunched over, leaning forward.
Yeah, he's always ready in that kind of hunched over fighting
like
pose.
a wild animal. But you couldn't have Hugh Jackman doing that for 90% of his scenes because it'd look stupid in live action.
Yeah. Doesn't translate very well.
You know, which, unless we've got someone like Andy Serkis playing Wolverine, who could, like, you know, maintain that pose the entire time. Like, imagine that. Do you know they're going to reboot, like, the X-Men? Imagine if they actually got, like, someone who's capable of, like, contorting their body in that way to play Wolverine, and they fought like a wild animal.
And you say that they're rebooting the X-Men, we don't yet know what they're doing with it, and I really hope that it isn't just it's Hugh Jackman and Kelsey Grammer again, because I don't want, in 10 years' time, like a, 50-something-year-old Hugh Jackman
Let him rest.
to still be Wolverine.
Let him do musicals. I'm still mad about, like, Joe the X-Men or the Wolverine Deadpool thing. I'm still so mad that joke Ryan Reynolds made of making it a musical.
Oh,
because there was a rumor like Ryan Reynolds was like putting around like, yeah, Hugh Jackman doesn't want to be Wolverine, he wants to do musicals now, so we're thinking of pitching Deadpool as a musical to bring it back. I would have loved to watch that.
Don't worry, Karl, you're getting that with the Joker sequel, right?
No, it's gonna fucking suck. Like Joe said, mentioned that we started like the Dr. Say Us. How was that not? I would watch a Deadpool Wolverine musical.
And I would watch a Planet of the Apes musical.
I would indeed, yes. You know what, folks at home? Let us know what musical version of a film you would watch, and we'll see you all next time.